Hello, do you hear me?
I can hear you. Welcome back, Joe.
It's good to be back.
So, I read that on the Reddit that you're having a sort of personal alliance with the Union of the People. Can you explain that?
Yes, that is correct. I have reached out to the Union of the People in recent days and offered a personal partnership with them because I believe that the current shape of the Dow Progressive Coalition is not likely to change from what it currently exists as. However, I have a lot of appreciation for the goals and the work of the Union of the People, so I reached out to them personally as an individual to form a partnership with them in my own individual name. And we are currently talking and deciding what we want to do to work together in the next cycle.
Okay. Before we start any more questions, do you have any statement you would like to make, either to the listener or to the voters of the community before the election?
Yes, please vote for me for re-election. I only have one more term that I'm seeking before I will step down, and of course support my party, the Progressive Union, in the legislative races by voting for their ticket.
Okay, so if we compare to the last election, have the Progressive Union or yourself changed stances on any issues that you're aware of?
Could you repeat that? The Union of the People and myself, what we might share?
No, that your own party, that if we compare this election and the last election, have your party changed their stance on any issues that you are aware of?
As far as I can tell, our party has not really evolved much on the issues per se. The main ones are still the same. Of course, our platform was never too far beyond the general. So it focused on basic things like the enactment of the Liberty Tree, which is no longer an issue. We still support the freedom ideology in the long run. However, that will not be consideration in the next cycle going on because that's farther down the road. One area where we might be, I don't know if we could say that we're different, but we might be more prone to change is where we fall on some of our intermediate social policy trees. It seems that there's varying support for either patronage, rationalism, or even commerce, depending on how things go and what works for us. We still appear to be very devoted to peaceful solutions as a means of expanding China's power and influence in the world. We of course, are generally abhorrent of war, even if we're ready for defensive battles. I think that, generally speaking, we're very much the same party that we were at the beginning of the last election, even if our party has grown somewhat in that time.
Let me check the stream, because Stringlord says no one is talking, so I want to make sure everything is on air as it should. Okay, I can hear the stream fine, and I can hear you over Discord. You can't hear Joe even though you're in the same voice chat. Are you sure you haven't him muted, because I can hear him fine?
He doesn't hear me? That's odd.
People can hear you on the stream too, so that's weird. Well, we can keep going. So, is there any particular topic you wish to discuss?
Yes, one of the initiatives that I'm eagerly pushing going into this next cycle, I'd hoped we could have maybe gained more momentum on it this week, but it looks like that's not going to happen, is the creation of a gentry of justice, modeled after the U.S. Department of Justice in some ways. Given the amount of cases that have already come before the Supreme Court, and given that it will probably still be a while before we have enough legal clarification in our institutions, there are likely, I think, to be many more cases brought before the court. So it is my hope that with the Gentry of Justice, we can have a system in place to deal with this better. One thing that emerged recently in terms of unnecessary time wasting, I feel, is that it took a while for us to confirm who would represent the ministry in the case before the court. With the Gentry of Justice and devoted officers like an Attorney General or a Solicitor General, we will have people on hand at all moments to represent the government when suits are brought against it, and that will ease the process of us starting these hearings sooner and in a more timely fashion, especially ones that are time sensitive, which the recent one was. We managed to start hearing before the game session because it concerned the referendum and the vote for liberty, but we were not able to have the decision announced until after the fact, and that rather rendered the whole situation moot, in my view. So what we want is a legal representative for the government who can spring into action at any moment and do what needs to be done in the courts on behalf of the government. Furthermore, I believe that there's a great deal of a lack of understanding about the legal process, about the judicial process, that a Gentry of Justice will be able to help other people understand so that they can file good suits and so that they can have the proper tools in place to construct good, coherent briefs that are easier for the justices to understand and digest when they are making their decisions in a case. And I think it will allow hearings to go more smoothly. Part of my feeling is that the last two hearings, particularly the second one, did not go as smoothly as they might have had there been more awareness of the legal process. I think the Gentry of Justice can be a tool to improve awareness on that front. Then, of course, and I believe this is major, as we still have many laws to pass, once so many have been passed, it will be very difficult to navigate them. What the United States does is it takes its acts and it codifies them so that they are easy to reference in legal and judicial manners. It's known as the United States Code. I propose that the Gentry of Justice spearhead the effort to develop just such a code for China, and that be used for all legal research purposes, in court cases, outside of court cases, to simplify the process even further. And then once we have most of the laws on the books into this code, simply a matter of easy maintenance from that point forward.
Okay, so
yes, are you there?
okay, I'm back. Sorry, I got a call. Anyway, so the main purpose of this would be to make the system more efficient and reduce the wasting of time that multiple court cases or lacking court cases, and to have someone to represent the government in case it gets sued. That's the purpose of this. Am I right?
Yes, that's one of the main purposes of this. It's clear to me that some people are better attorneys than others. We need to professionalize this process more than we've done in order to make it easier for the justices and any judges on lower courts that we may yet establish, because I believe that's also coming in with proposals such as the lower courts the lower courts Enforcement Act. Or, I'm blanking on the name at the moment, but it was proposed by legislator Ravis of the IFP. I have a different theory about how we might establish lower courts, but either way, it looks like lower courts are coming in this next cycle. So we have to think about the resources that they will need, and I believe the Gentry of Justice can provide such resources. Furthermore, it will give more things to do to people who currently have no position in government. At the very least, we'll need to create the role of a Deputy Attorney General, as I've currently drafted the Gentry Charter, as well as a Solicitor General. There may be also special attorneys appointed by the legislature. There may be other officers appointed to meet these needs. So it will give more work to people who currently are enjoying the game but looking for something to do. And of course, giving jobs to everyone, help keep the community together so that we have good turnout in elections, and the game is far more vibrant and diverse and able to ebb and flow and reflect what I think is the purpose, a true political system at work. But the fewer numbers we have, the harder that becomes. So the Gentry of Justice, along with other gentries, is filling that hole in the community with the extra work it will create, in addition to the improvements it will make for the courts.
Okay, so tell me this. What kind, if any, dual mandate restrictions would apply to the Gentry of Justice and its members?
Well, for one, it is my view that the Attorney General should be a member of the ministry. So if passed as it is currently drafted, that will be a restriction. Not just anyone can be the Attorney General. The term of the Attorney General would be bound to that of the minister. Similarly, a special attorney, if appointed by the legislature, would not be accountable to the Attorney General, and it would have to operate independently, even though it would be allowed access to the resources of the Gentry of Justice, as if it were one of its attorneys. Beyond that, with it being a gentry that is supposed to represent the entire government, it will need the consent of a majority of all three branches. So that seems to be the major hurdle going forward, is allowing it to exist so that it can serve its role. I truly believe it should be approved by all three branches if it's going to be something that represents the government in any suits against it, or in any suits that the government may choose to place against individuals or citizens who have acted inappropriately. Therefore, we need all three branches. As far as other restrictions that would apply, none really come to mind, except that, again, the terms are bound to that of the ministers, and no one once in the gentry is guaranteed a place there. They might be replaced by different appointments with different election cycles.
Okay, so is there anything you would like to add about the gentry besides what you have already told us?
I guess the only other thing to mention is that I'm hoping to be the first Attorney General, so in many ways my campaign for re-election is a campaign to be the first Attorney General.
Okay, so you don't think there would be any sort of conflict of interest with you being the Attorney General and also being a minister at the same time?
No, I do not. The idea is to sort of expand upon the language currently in the Constitution that says ministers can take individual specific roles in the execution of government duties. Currently, we don't really have much of that aside from Minister Goat serving as our supreme commander of our military. I think this is merely an extension of that, providing a much-needed gentry with something that is connected to the ministry to give a more personalized role to a member of the ministry. I think one of the advantages of having the Attorney General be a minister is that it makes the position somewhat reflective of electoral politics and the will of the people. If the Attorney General were simply appointed, this would not be the case. Therefore, an Attorney General who proves to be poor at their job and unpopular to the people can be voted out during an election cycle. Similarly, it could well be the case that an attorney general could be removed of their position by their fellow ministers and replaced with another if things got so terrible that the situation needed to be fixed before the next election occurred. That language might need to be clarified better in the charter. It's by no means a final document, especially considering that it likely will not be voted on until we have a new legislature. But ultimately, I maintain that the requirement that the Attorney General be a member of the ministry is a good thing that allows electoral politics to be a factor in the way we administer justice in China.
Okay, so mostly related to your party and also to the community overall, let me bring up a list of the unofficial wiki of the candidates for parties so far. While I do that, you can explain how your party are in the process of picking its legislator, because it's one of the last parties to pick their legislators. You haven't done that yet. Are you running into some kind of problems, or are you just taking your time to ensure the best possible pick?
It would be the latter. Excuse me one moment.
Meanwhile, let me bring up the DG wiki, which is an wiki for democratic games, which is run by me and of course the community of all these games. Now let me show you a couple of useful things you can get out of this wiki. First, you can go to the wiki page for Democraciv. Here it is. Here you get some history on the older marks, such as Mark II, a lot of system they used. A bit about Mark III. And not much about Mark IV, it's mostly just stats. But this page here is very useful. It contains links both on the wiki and non-wiki, such as form to register to vote, moderation appeal in case you get banned, constitution guidelines, beginners info, the other wikis, yes, these three of them, and social and media links. Now this one, candidates for elections, is useful right now. Here you can see candidates per party and coalition. Currently we have 7 executive candidates, which is 1 less than the last election. We got 27 legislative candidates, which is 7 more than the last election. Here you can see all the candidates running so far in the candidacy thread for the game. And down here you have the candidates for the last election a month ago. The RLT column, you can see which candidates ran last time. And the green was those who ran last time and won. The yellow, which are me and Cool Kelvin, are those who ran and lost. And as you can see, an interesting fact is that nearly or over half of the candidates this election are people, new people, who didn't run last time. And most of the people who ran and didn't win last time have actually left their list and possibly the game altogether. So was a bit of work put into this, and I hope it will become useful for you and you learn something new. Now back to the interview.
Yes, good to be back. I don't know if you can hear, but there's a thunderstorm going on in my area, and I overheard a weather warning on my phone. I wanted to make sure that was not about to be destroyed by a tornado, but it's just a flash flood warning, and I'm indoors, so all is well. So back to the question that you asked me about the Progressive Union and deciding its ticket for the legislature. Well, we're currently trying to make sure that we have a good ticket comprised of capable legislators and those who are willing to make the time commitments, and we're just having a thorough discussion on that matter. We're not running into any problems as the Progressive Union, whatever problems might be, merely taking our time since we do have until Friday to decide.
Welcome, Ravis. Do you have any questions you would like to ask Joe right now?
Do I have any questions that I would like you to ask me, or do you have some questions for me?
Ravis here is... you're not a legislator yet, are you?
No, I'm not a legislator yet.
But you're a party member of the IFP. Do you have any internal party positions or something like that?
Yes, I'm currently seated as the internal judge of the Industrial Futurist Party. We haven't had any cases yet, though, so it's basically just a position.
Okay, any of you have any questions for each other?
I haven't actually had much time to interact with Joe during my time here, and I was actually really wondering what he was currently campaigning on. I know he's probably running for a second term, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Although I don't know if he's here, actually.
I'm here. Do you not hear me?
You can't hear Joe?
I can't hear Joe, no. Is he talking?
Yeah, he's talking.
Huh.
String said he couldn't hear him either.
Problem too. Yeah, I cannot hear Joe.
Well, are you sure you haven't him muted or something?
Yeah, I'm checking him right now. He is all good.
That's weird, because I can hear him, and the stream can hear him, but they hear him through me, so... I don't know why Discord is behaving like this.
You know what? Let me switch to my phone and see if that changes. Alright. Hello?
Yo.
Yes, hello?
Okay, I think... Can Joe talk for a second, just so I can know if I can hear him?
Yeah, he talked right now.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
This is me?
And it's not even representing that he's speaking.
I mean, you could open up the stream, but you would have delays, but at least you can hear him.
Yeah, you know what? Let me grab my computer again.
While we do that, Ravis, could you describe your party in a few sentences?
My party? Oh, certainly, I could definitely describe my party. I mean, the Industrial Futurist Party is very different from a lot of the other parties in Democraciv right now, because we have a very set stance on war, where there's a lot of parties that currently haven't really figured out what they're going to say when a war proposal comes up, whether or not they're going to be pro-war or anti-war depending on circumstances. We're a very pacifist party. Now, that doesn't mean that we're completely anti-war. We will certainly fight a defensive war if that's necessary, but there's really no instance where the IFP would stand for a aggressive war, because our strategy doesn't necessarily rely on the declaration of war, but more on the fostering of internationalism and foreign relations through diplomacy and other more peaceful methods.
Joe, you want to try asking my question?
I don't really have any questions at the moment.
Joe, you want to try asking? Okay, he doesn't have a question. So, would you consider yourself the primary pacifist party then?
I don't necessarily think there are even any other parties that have expressed such strong views on pacifism or anti-aggressive war, so I think the IFP stands as the main party in Democraciv right now that is for pacifism. But it's not just pacifism, let me make that clear. It's this idea that we don't want to create aggressive or sour relationships with foreign powers. We want to foster better relationships through diplomacy, and we find that pacifism is a great way to accomplish that.
Okay, so, the Progressive Union, which Joe Parrish is a member of, is, at least for the Iron Union, also considered a reasonably pacifist, peaceful party. But you don't see it that way.
Oh no, I certainly see them as a pacifist party. Not necessarily that they have provisions as they prefer peace. However, they never directly state that they are against aggressive war. Like, there are instances where other parties, such as the Progressive Union, would engage in aggressive war. We at the IFP just are flat out against declaring war on other nations in almost every circumstance, if not every circumstance.
Joe, you want to respond to that?
Currently, the Progressive Union's view is that it does not favor aggressive war. It will generally oppose it if it can. I can only imagine the Progressive Union supporting an aggressive campaign in the event that perhaps the defeat of China in the entire game was not at risk. But that won't really be apparent until much later in the game. There are, of course, parties that are that favor aggressive war as a matter of first policy, or at least are open to the idea in order to achieve some other end. The Progressive Union is not among those. We mainly look at, when we talk of war and how we might prepare for it, it is under the assumption that we might be attacked by aggressors and that we will need to respond forcefully and effectively to protect Chinese sovereignty. That to me seems to be the main difference. So we are actively pacifists, but we're not afraid to put up a fight if let's say Songhai decides to invade, which given the tendency of Songhai is reasonably likely in the future. Of course, it will depend on what they want and where they set their eyes. But where it gets, I think, tricky, and this is something that we might need to decide amongst ourselves going forward, is how we might push a war forward. Would we merely repel invaders? Would we launch a counterattack to destroy some of their further military units or some of their infrastructure? That is not something that we have discussed. I suspect, however, that we lean toward erring on the side of peace and least loss of life as possible.
Your response to that, Ravis?
Yeah, certainly. When it comes to war, I can say without a doubt that we in the Progressive Union are on the same side. We are both actively pacifist. I would further state, based on Joe's answer, that yes, the IFP is the only staunchly pacifist party, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Progressive Union's view on war and pacifism is bad. I personally agree that yes, having strong defenses in the case of an invasion from somebody like the Songhai that have proven themselves to be an aggressive power in the past and through history, and through AI, more importantly, it's just very important to have a very structured and a very effective response for when aggressive war is declared on us. Defensive war was perfectly fine. And I think that the IFP and the Progressive Union can certainly find almost complete common ground on that issue.
But issues such as tradition versus liberty, that is a deal breaker, though.
Yes, that was a deal breaker for the original vote, quote unquote. That I guess wasn't actually a vote based on a couple of court rulings. But yeah, that was the original deal breaker. That was why the United Front fell apart in many ways. And we don't see eye to eye on that issue. We still feel the loss of tradition quite heavily. But we'll move on. We have liberty now. We'll make the most of it. Currently, there are some battles that will go on in the court about the legality of some of the moves that were taken by the ministry to secure that vote. But at the end of the day, that vote's in the past. Tradition has already failed. Although it was key to us, we can move past that. And I think that the more important thing is to foster good relationships with other parties. And I don't necessarily think that liberty versus tradition has any ground anymore. Certainly, there were some problems in the voting process when it came to that social policy choice. But I think that's in the past, and I think we can find common ground to work with people like the Progressive Union that did vote for liberty.
So, which issues would you say that, except pacifism, that you and the IFP and the PU could agree on?
I mean, I certainly think that the IFP, the PU, and the whole of Democraciv can agree on the idea of a stable economy, a regulated economy, but an economy that is open for free trade, open markets, allows for the function of the economy as established by the Marketplace Establishment Act, so that it doesn't necessarily need to have constant government intervention to function. And to that point, it's very important to the IFP, and I believe it is to, I would say, all parties, including the PU, that China itself have a stable economy, both internally and externally, to further allow for the prosperity of the nation going forward. Money is an important part of any civilization, and the fact that we are promoting the stability of an economy and the growth of an economy, I think is something that we could certainly see eye to eye on.
So currently you are number 4 on the IFP legislative list for the election. Do you think you have a chance of winning?
I certainly think we have a chance of winning. Well, not we, myself. Look, I'm the number 4 chance because the only reason I'm running, I wanted to be put on as a standby because while I certainly represent our party's views and I like everything that's put out in the platform, I like to speak from personal opinion a lot, and that can get kind of controversial. And so I know there are a lot of people out there that don't like me particularly, and that's okay. You don't have to vote for me. But I'm just out here to promote the IFP values and to tell you that, look, there are a lot of people on our ballot right now, such as Joe and definitely Vash, that are great candidates that definitely are imbued and embody the traits of our party, will fight for their values, for our values, and will fight for you as somebody that voted for us. And so I think it's important that even if I don't win, which I think I do have a fighting chance of winning, because we currently have 3 legislators in the legislature, and the legislature's subject to grow currently, so we have 3. 4 doesn't seem too out of character, but if I don't get in, it doesn't matter. I fought for my values, and as long as some people get in, I'm great with that.
So, what is, either your personal or your party as a whole, what is your most important issues for this election and for the weeks and turns to come?
I certainly think that right now the most important issue is a separation of powers, the getting a lot of regulation bills through the legislature to make sure that separation of powers are very clearly defined by law so that we don't continue to have these constitutional issues that plague the courts. I'm certainly going to be fighting for my bill, the LC, the Lower Courts Establishment Act, because I think it's really important in order to curb the sheer amount of cases that are going through the Supreme Court right now, and they don't have the time to do that. And so I think it's important that we make routes that will allow them to give and delegate responsibility for certain cases to lower courts that might be able to provide the same ruling, but without taking the amount of time away from the Supreme Court that would be necessary for such lawsuits. And there's been a lot of lawsuits this last week, and I think that, again, comes almost directly from the fact that we need constitutional regulation, we need regulation of separation of powers, and we just need a little bit more regulation to put Democraciv in a place where its governmental systems are stable to the point that we can have a smooth game. And I think in the coming weeks, certainly more Gentry Acts are going to be put through the legislature, which only act to improve citizen involvement and add more RP depth to the game, which is always great. And we saw the Marketplace Act go through the legislature earlier this week, and that's certainly going to be looked at. We're going to be looking at people to be on that committee to regulate that, and also just to figure out what's the best way to run the different systems of democracy. I think those are the main issues going into this second term of the.
So Joe here suggested the entry of justice earlier with the attorney generals and lawyers to deal with to represent the ministers in lawsuits and to prosecute the members of the community for crimes against the constitution or laws and so on. So I asked him there, what is the dual mandate restrictions for those roles? Can you be both a minister, a legislator, and have these roles? So I would like to ask the same question for you, for these lower courts. If you're a member of a lower court, can you also have another role? What are the rules for that? Ravis, are you there?
I don't hear him.
No, it's quiet.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. But certainly, for as far as the lower courts are concerned, it's very important that we understand that, yes, dual mandate would apply to this. So I don't see a universe in which it would be acceptable for a judge on the Supreme Court or a judge on the lower court to serve as a minister at the same time. And I don't necessarily see a universe where it's acceptable for a minister to say, hey, these lower court positions exist. In the middle of my term, I'm going to start running for one. No. I think it's very important that, dual mandate, all the laws in the Constitution apply to this, and it should be quite clear that through the bill, the lower courts are stacked and made in a similar, if almost identical way to the Supreme Court, to the point that they're basically a justice just with a different title and a lower position, so that the justice has the ability to overturn their rulings if they see fit. They're simply another arm of the judicial branch. And I do believe that all current dual mandate laws should apply to that. And I want to make it very clear that my purpose in writing the law was to state that no, you as a minister should not be able to also hold a position on this lower court. And I think if there are any questions about that, I can answer that. But that was the intent, and that is what I seek to gain by passing this law and making this law.
Before we move on, Joe, do you have any question for him?
If there are any questions about
Joe, do you have a question for Ravis?
No, I have no questions at this moment.
Okay, so I had a question, but I think I forgot it. Well, until I remember it, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, I can.
No, not necessarily as far as the Lower Courts Establishment Act. I mean, I'll say one more thing about that. There were some questions from the Supreme Court about the structure and how it's set up, about how they would like the bill lawsuits to first go through lower courts and then go to the Supreme Court through an appeals process. And that's kind of the inverse of how I wrote that law. What I see as the point of the Lower Courts Establishment Act is not to provide another layer for people to sue through. It's simply a means to take the burden off of the Supreme Court, and they can delegate certain, maybe not quite as important responsibilities in cases to lower court members and to lower court judges. Because not every case that the Supreme Court sees is a constitutional crisis case that will determine the way the game goes. That's simply not how the cases in this game work. And so, if we give the Supreme Court, the ability to not have to wait for a lawsuit to go through a lower court, but simply give them the ability to say, hey, I only have so much time this week, us five only have so much time this week, and this seems like the important case, or these two sound like the important cases. We'll try these two cases, and then we will hand these off to the Supreme Clerk, and they will delegate the rest of these 4 or 5 cases to the lower courts, and over a process of a couple weeks, they will accomplish those cases that are deemed lower on the bracket. And that's why the appeal system is also set up, so that if a suer or a plaintiff decides that no, they do not accept the ruling of the lower court, they can simply appeal to a different lower court or appeal to the Supreme Court. And there is also a system set in place that at any time through any proceeding, if the Supreme Court decides that they want to take on that case, they can. And so I think it's important to realize that's why I set it up that way, not to provide another roadblock for cases to go through before they get to the Supreme Court, but simply as a way to take off the burden. It's different from the U.S. Supreme Court and how the U.S. court system works, and that's intentional.
Okay, funnily enough, this was exactly what I forgot to ask you about. That was the question.
Oh, great.
So, Joe was about to say something before you talked. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, so on the idea of making lower courts, I haven't written anything official. However, I have engaged in talks extensively over the past few days with both Chief Justice Archwizard and Justice Tiberius about how lower courts should look. We have a different vision than what is currently reflected in the Lower Courts Establishment Act. For one, we believe that the lower courts should have automatic original jurisdiction, which is to say the cases go to them primarily and then are appealed to the Supreme Court. This, of course, is different from what Ravis has proposed, wherein the Supreme Court chooses to delegate cases to the lower courts. We believe that lower courts should be the first bulwark of legal processing, and the Supreme Court should only then hear which cases are appealed that it wants to hear, and that the Supreme Court is mostly left to matters of higher legal importance within our government. This will allow them, I think, to not get bogged down in a lot of the busy work of the courts, and that lesser matters can be handled more quickly. Another difference that we have in mind is that we would think of establishing a system wherein up to 4 lower courts are established and cases are heard by a single judge, randomly selected from a pool for each court, and that the Supreme Court would have control over how many of these lower courts are active and what their domains would be. So, for one example, there might be a general lower court that can take virtually any case that is not covered within the categories of the others. If we wanted a specific lower court, we might have a lower court that is devoted to gentry law. We might have a lower court that is devoted to religious law that is passed, so that the disputes can find their proper experts within the system. We would leave that determination either to the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice, him or herself, so that we believe that the lower court should be a vehicle to serve the Supreme Court and make its administration of justice easier to pursue. And both the Chief Justice Archwizard and Justice Tiberius seem to think that the system as I've proposed more closely follows that. Of course, there are elements that could be combined with that of the Lower Courts Establishment Act proposed by Ravis, that such that we have maybe a compromise system that still gives the justices what they want.
Okay. You have a comment to that, Ravis?
Yeah, I heard Joe's comments, and I do agree that the way that I've set up the system is not currently not necessarily the most specialized of systems, but I think it's important that we don't specialize courts so specifically to religious law or to gentry law or to other such kinds of law, because inevitably I want as many bills as possible to go through the Supreme Court, right? These are the people that we have elected to this position. Well, not we, but the legislature has appointed to this position because we believe that they have the intellect and the knowledge and the experience to properly determine verdicts and determine how cases should go. And I believe that as many cases as possible should continue to go through the Supreme Court. The point of the Lower Court Establishment Act, where I think that differs from the vision that Joe, Tiberius, and Archwizard have for an establishment of any courts below the Supreme Court, is that I fundamentally want as many cases to go through the Supreme Court as possible. I understand that they have a huge burden with the amount of cases they currently have to see. The amount of cases over the same issue is quite worrying. However, I don't want to take that burden off of them completely, because at the end of the day, it is their job to determine the supreme law of the land. And so we have appointed those 5. I want those 5 to continue making as many decisions as possible. However, I want to give them an avenue to, hey, we have voted, and we don't see this case as being incredibly influential to the state of Democraciv or of China as it stands. However, we still want somebody to try this case. So the lower court will see it, and then at any point, if it becomes incredibly influential, the Supreme Court can take it up, or if somebody doesn't like the ruling, that can simply be appealed. And so I think certainly aspects of my bill and of the ideas that you've proposed can be combined together, but I think their motivations are fundamentally different, because I still want the Supreme Court to be doing as much work as possible, but I want to provide them an avenue in which work can be delegated to other courts that are possibly able to settle more trivial disputes or disputes that don't necessarily affect everything in Democraciv. I think it's important that the Supreme Court continue doing its job as it is doing now, and that to add any more roadblocks or hurdles in order to get to that court kind of undermines the system that we have in place.
Any comment from Joe about that?
No, I believe everything that I wanted to cover was covered in my last round of commentary.
Okay, so I would like to change the topic. For Joe, does the PU have a stance on religion in the game? Either in-game or a meta structure around it?
We believe that religious freedom is of key importance in our society. We will not support any position that violates the religious freedom of our citizens. Similarly, we believe in a strong separation of church and state. We do not believe that any public funds should be spent to construct religious edifices. We are, however, fine with devoting production, the normal production, to constructing them for the faith advantages. We also are okay with a meta church existing and controlling the distribution of missionaries and the like throughout the world, and having that much input. We see no real issue there. There was some concern that maybe missionaries do not align with our values, but given that a missionary's power is of convincing people, not forcing, we see no issue there. An inquisitor would be a different matter, of course. So we have what I believe is a middle attitude on religion, given the range of possibilities, centered on individual freedom.
But the proposal about founding a state church or a religious community collective, or I think it is, what is your stance on that bill or similar bills?
We are fine with such a bill as that. We do not believe that it violates religious liberty or the separation of church and state, provided that the church does not have control of public funds and the like, and does not control too many decisive in-game decisions that the ministry might make. So I believe that as it's currently going, as current proposals have it, particularly the one from the Union of the People, there's no cause for alarm.
Okay, so if it hasn't changed, the bill I read would allow this state church or community or whatever it was, it would allow it to take in-game decisions about using missionaries to recruit with faith and such. Are you okay with them doing that?
Yes, that is a completely acceptable provision.
Okay. Ravis, your opinions on this topic? The same questions apply to you?
The current church bill, as we've seen it, as it's been proposed, actually comes from the IFP, and I feel that it's quite important that we do recognize the separation of church and state. I see a secular China and I see a religious China. I see a secular legislator and I see a religious figure or a religious individual. I do not see them meshing together. Like Joe said, I don't approve of the use of state funds to buy religious units, religious buildings, or devote specifically to the religion. And I, of course, want to maintain the ability that at any point anybody could follow any other religion or have as much religious liberty as they desire and opt out of the church on an individual basis. I find that the bill, as it's currently set up, has a pretty good method of separating the identity of the church as a church and the identity of the government as a government. And I think it also sets the jurisdiction of the church in a pretty fair way to maintain the powers of the ministry, almost completely fairly, and to maintain the powers of the legislature as well. It's only reasonable, I believe, that a church should have jurisdiction over faithful matters. And as it stands, the only decisions that have currently been proposed to belong to the church are the selection of religious tenets, which should certainly be a religious issue. And when it comes to the movements and the actions of religious missionaries, we've yet to run into that problem. But I think if a circumstance were to come where a clash between the ministry and the church came on the issue of who gets to decide what happens with that, certainly the spreading of faith might come down to the actions of the ministry, but the decision to spread faith and the decision to make actions that directly affect the church and the religion of China should fall into the established church.
Okay, so first off, is there anything any of you would like to add on this topic before moving on?
I have nothing more to add.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I would like to say briefly that a lot of the aspects of the bill as proposed really allow for most styles, if not all styles of roleplay, to continue as advertised as they currently exist, and that I don't think anybody should have too much of a problem with the bill from a standpoint of roleplay.
So, if any of you dare, would you like to make election predictions for the election? If we assume we have 12 legislators as we have now, Ravis, how many do you think your party would win?
In a perfect world, I definitely see us maintaining our 3 spots that we currently have occupied by Aardvark, Joe, and Bird. Certainly, if the legislative count goes up, I'd like to see all 4 of us get into office. I think that keeps us on our current trajectory. However, the party would settle for no less than 2, and certainly 3 is that great middle ground, and we hope to grow. And that's our goal in this election.
Joe, how many seats do you think the PU would win? Would you keep your current 2, go lower, or would you increase?
I suspect that we'll at least keep our current 2. If we do gain 1 more, it will probably only be 1 more. I suspect we have grown in our numbers since the beginning of the game. However, not quite as much as other parties. I think where most of the growth will be in the new legislature will be with the emergence of the Union of the People. And I believe that is seriously going to affect the direction of politics. We might even see a majority coalition form, given the new balances that are about to approach. I suspect that the Liberals will do quite well. I suspect they'll gain some seats. The Celestials, I suspect, will perhaps lose a seat, given that their party, while still quite large, has not grown relative to where they were before. So it appears that their overall share of the representation would then be lesser than what it is. So they might be diminished a bit, or at the very least, their percentage of the legislature will be lower than it currently is. And not artificially. As far as the Iron Union goes, I suspect that they'll probably maintain their base of it. They seem to do pretty well for themselves, and I suspect that with their own ticket, they'll get a greater share of the seats than before. It's hard to say what will happen with the Industrial Futurists. I suspect they'll at least maintain their 3.
Yeah, and I'd like to add my predictions for the other parties as well. I share the same suspicions as Joe, that the Union of the People is definitely going to be a very polarizing force in the coming legislature, and it's definitely going to be an influential party in determining who gets seats where and when. And so I definitely see them gaining at least 2 legislative seats, if not more. And especially if the legislature grows, I see them on track to eclipse the Celestials almost, maybe even taking one of the Celestial seats, seeing on how massive their growth has been. And then I see the Liberals maintaining their seats, perhaps getting one. They have the backing, currently, the Order of Dow, of the Loud and Uninformed Party, which I think is a small but dedicated group of voters that can definitely swing the election in the favor of the Order of Dow, and maybe give them another seat. Or if the legislature grows even greater than that. But the Iron Union, certainly, you guys will keep your hold as it is now, possibly grow. To be honest, the only party that I see having any huge loss in this election as it stands might be the Celestials, and that's not because they've done anything wrong, but simply their position is not what it was during the first elections, as Joe said. And no, I would love to see them maintain their hold and maybe even gain, but I definitely see them possibly going down 1. And just the makeup of the legislature, I can't stress this enough, is going to become a lot more volatile as we see more parties entering into it. Definitely a growth as we have way more members than we did 4 weeks ago. And I think it's really important that we as candidates and the nation as a whole understands that while we've had all these debates about the legislative proceedings being very volatile and very slow, that's going to be even further exacerbated over the next 4 weeks, certainly.
Can I step in?
Yeah, please, RetroSpaceMan, a legislator from the Iron Union, my fellow party member, is here. Would you like to make election predictions for this election, please?
Oh yeah. Right now, the leg is currently 12 seats. We have 12 seats in the legislature right now. It's split pretty evenly. I see that split going forward and slightly swung to Dallas. I did the calculations, and if every single person from who's registered as party independent voted, right now we're looking at a 20 to 21 seat legislator, depending on if lurkers vote or not. So you're going from 12 to like 21. That's going to be a big jump. So what I see is this: I personally see Celestials keeping their hold because they have a strong base. Because they have said strong base, they're just going to keep their hold, maybe expand 1 more seat. But I don't see them moving in that. I suspect Union of the People getting 3 seats minimum. They are about to eclipse the Celestials. They're one of the 2 parties that have 20 plus members. They're going to get 3 seats. Iron Union, I see us at least holding the 2, but my dream will be the 5 seats, but no, that's not unrealistic. We're probably going to get 3 or 4 seats. Order Dow, especially with backing from Loud and Uninformed, will definitely get pushed to, I want to say, 4 or 5 seats, because because all of the parties have split margins and stuff like that. We're looking at 8 members voting directly for one party will swing the election to one side. Who I missed? I was about to mention IFP. IFP I see holding on, maybe getting a seat, but not much. And also Progressive Union, I don't see them expanding. They have that coalition thing with Order Dow, but I don't see them expanding their own base personally. They probably need loud and uninformed voters or lurkers to vote for them just to get the leg seats to 3 or 4, but I see them maintaining at 2. And yeah, those are my predictions.
Well, yeah, since you mentioned that the legislature is going to grow to at least 20 to 21 seats as it stands, that's a huge increase from what we have now.
8 to 9 seats.
Yeah, and on that basis...
Yeah.
Yeah, going up to 20 to 21. On that basis, I definitely see the Order of Dow coming in as the relative majority for the legislature in this next cycle. Yeah. I don't see a future where they're actually not, based on the voting numbers right here, which is kind of amazing.
Yes. Here's the thing. Those 3 or 4 seats will instantly be gone for Union of the People because they just, for the first time, they proposed a legislative list, which their predecessor parties haven't done before. But, so I'm seeing them getting 3 or 4 seats. That's half of the new seats gone. That leaves 4 or 5 seats split between the major parties. Without the volatility of Loud and Underform, I saw Iron Union, Celestials, Order of Dal, IFP, and maybe Progressive Union pushing it, gaining those seats, depending on if we got 20 or 21. However, with Loud and Uninformed, I could easily see the Order of Dal gaining 5 or 6 seats easily, because if you look at the margins, it's between 8 votes. Like, for example,
Yeah, no,
look at party makeups. If you voted, people voting on party lines. Channel. Ranks. Ah, crap. Okay. Iron Union 17. Industrious Futures Party 15. Celestials 23. Where is it? Union of the People 20. Order of Dal 17. Progressive Union. Oh, Capitalist Mercenary Party 4 members. Loud and Uninformed has 9 members right now. Since we're looking at the major parties right now at play, we're looking at most 6-member difference. But if you compare, like, Iron Union and Order of Dal are tied. Industrial Futures Party is only 2 members behind. And Union of the People is 3 members behind the Celestials. That we're talking about 3 to 4 voter margins at this point. So I see a 9-member swing towards Order of Dal. I can easily see them gaining between 4 and 6 seats at this point.
Yeah. Certainly. And do you see a universe where there is an independent candidate that makes it into the legislature this election? Because over this past week, I've certainly noticed just a large percentage of the usually lurking independents starting to talk and starting to actually express views on policy and other things. And there are a couple of the independent candidates out there, and as they don't really see any relationships with any particular parties, do you think them, along with the relatively small minority of the capitalist miscreants, as well as the Nuke Party, do you think that they could possibly get a seat?
Have they proposed list yet?
The independents? The independents have
No,
not...
I know the independents are running themselves. Like, they run independently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they
how
run
about the minor
independently.
parties, like Capitalist and Nuke?
I don't believe I saw either of them on there. You could definitely check.
Because if they don't have a list, they could also act as swing voters.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
If a party doesn't have a list, then there's automatically swing voters, because...
Nuke has a legislative list.
Oh, Nuke has a
They do?
legislative list?
I didn't see one for the miscreants, definitely, though.
Alright, oh yeah, Nuke has one. They have 2 members. I don't see him getting one. Any.
I also... Well, yeah, and I also don't necessarily see them voting for themselves.
If they vote for themselves... No, it might mess with the ratios a little bit,
Yeah.
but I don't see them gaining a seats. That's like... Okay. This is based on previous... If you're going by the first elections, that had like between 6 to 10 members. No, not 10. Like 6, I think, right? Like at their peak, they had like 6 members. Correct me if I'm wrong. Around there. They failed to get a seat. That eventually led to their collapse and formation of none and independent candidates and stuff like that. But based on that knowledge, small parties like that, unless they have a solidified base, don't usually get a seat. So I don't see the Capitalist or Nuke getting any seats in this election.
Okay. Do you see any kind of independent presence in this next legislature, or are they still even along with those swing voters that might even vote for the independent candidates based on their size? Or do you see any universe in which there is a independent presence on the legislature?
Since the lag is mostly based on parties, I do not see I see independents maybe getting into the ministry because that's based on a candidate by candidate basis. But how the voting system is made up for the legislators, that you have a list and you vote for a party, and if the party gets a certain amount of votes, they get a seat. And they have a list. Say, for example, our union, I'm top list. So if my party gets only one seat, I'm the first one to get a seat. Then it goes to RB. If we get a second seat, RB gets the second seat, and third seat, and so on and so forth. Pisani gets the third seat, Adam Dresden gets the fourth seat, and Maribel gets the fifth seat.
Yeah, no, I get that system.
Yeah, but because that system lends to parties, like you have like a large party base and the party votes for the party itself, I do not foresee independents gaining any ground in the leg unless people are unsatisfied with the parties.
No.
I would like to
interesting perspective.
Add on that if they do enough campaigning, I would like to bring up an example from the last election where Mk4, who was an independent, got 4 votes, and that was 5% of the total vote, and 7% was needed to get a seat. So he was nearly there, but now we have 3 independents, and that will split the independent vote. But if there is a campaign, which I have seen none of so far for the independents, it would be possible to get the people not satisfied with any of the parties to go independent.
Yeah, but you're basically relying on lurkers at that point.
Yeah.
And other independents, which you might get this. Okay, like that close margin, like 5% to 7%. I saw in the first election because of the low player count at the time, compared to now. But since we have like over 100 people participating in the system right now, I just don't see an independent making it in future legislators unless the voting system itself is changed to a more candidate-oriented system. But no, I was gonna say, Ravis, continue. Sorry.
No, that's definitely a logical perspective, seeing as the electorate system is currently how it is.
Yeah.
That being said, though, I don't know. I think this is definitely going to be an election that we can predict for certain parties. Like, we can certainly say the Dow is going to increase hugely. We can say that the Iron Union is going to keep its hold. I see you guys, with a couple lurker votes, definitely gaining an extra seat, maybe. But I think with the volatility that's introduced by parties like the Union of the People, and with the increased involvement of small parties, I think it's a little more up in the air.
You're talking about 1-2 seat differences, which yes, it means everything, but it usually ends up being evenly based on party proportions. But then again, we only have one election to go by.
Yeah. I'm just interested to see what happens. There's a lot of people that are currently not represented that clearly want to have some power in this game, so
yeah,
it'll be an interesting standpoint.
And the leg's gonna be fun with 20 plus people in it.
Yeah, it's gonna start becoming a shouting match.
Yeah, it's gonna be real fun.
Oh, it'll be great. Well, it's nice that even with the growth of the legislature, that the ministry can stay, rather
small.
And rather functional.
I mean, technically, we could increase the size and make it like proportional by law, but no one's advocating for that, so I don't see it changing to 5.
I definitely wouldn't advocate for that. I would not advocate for that. And the one thing I would advocate for, however, in regards to the ministry, is certainly that we have a lot of partisanship in this game right now, which is fine. I know a lot of people think that adds like another great layer of fun to the game, and I definitely think that too. But I think we have to look at our independent candidates for ministry, and I think we have to say that they are in a good position to maybe take one of those seats, and definitely in a position to do something good with it. Because I've been following Ken Lane for a while, ever since he's been taking a more active role on the server over the past week, and he definitely seems like a good choice. Certainly, he's not backed by the party, but to me, he's just kind of representative of this interesting, like unprecedented environment that's kind of come up over this last week that I think will have some impact on these elections.
Well, yeah, as you said, because the ministry is more candidate focused rather than party focused, I actually
Certainly.
foresee an independent taking on one of the seats. I know Espresso is retiring from the ministry. Bear will most likely get reelected. Wes is the safest bet. If you go to Ken's casino, if it was still open, sadly it's closed. I don't know why. I'm sad. Ken, if you're watching this, please reopen the casino. If I was a betting man, the one man I will bet will get reelected. It'll be Wes.
Really?
Yes, Wes. He has backing of Order Down, which we know has the backing of Routed Out of 4. They have a solid base, and Wes is basically, if there was the closest thing to a prime minister or a president, Wes will be it. And he's been the face of the ministry. That's why I see him getting reelected.
No, I definitely follow that. He has been a very vocal member. And he is the face of the ministry, as you say, because he's always out there on the streams. He's always talking intergovernment, and certainly he has the voter base to keep him alive.
Yeah.
Is Joe still here?
Yes.
Joe's still... Yeah.
Joe, how do you think you fare in the upcoming ministry elections? Are you running again? I haven't checked the ministry list.
Yes, I'm running again, and
Okay.
I have wondered about my ability to get reelected pretty much ever since the last election, because while I did get elected, I came in 5th place, which would imply that my seat is the most vulnerable of any seeking re-election. And I'm not currently sure if everyone is seeking re-election at this moment. But
I know Espresso's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cafe long.
So I suppose there could be some kind of an advantage that comes from incumbency. It depends on, I think, what the impact of my term as minister has been, and how happy the people are with it, and what supporters I've won, and what adversaries I've made along the way, and how that affects the mathematics of it. I was generally surprised that I even won in the first place.
That was a close one, depending on what system you used.
Yes, and I'm still not exactly sure why people gave me a chance in that way. Given that my personal base in the Progressive Union is a bit smaller than the other parties, that means that I won't necessarily be a lot of people's first votes, but given that I do have the coalition partners with the Order of Tao, who have the loud and uninformed with them, I suspect I will be the number 2 choice on several ballots, and that might be what makes the difference if I end up keeping my seat in the ministry.
Definitely, and I was just going to ask, over this past week, relationships between the ministry and the legislature have clearly soured from what they were previously. How do you think that your current relationship with the legislature will influence your ability to maintain a spot on the ministry? And do you think that you currently maintain a good relationship with your legislatures?
Well, I believe that depends on what half of the ministry you have in mind. Much of the recent division has been over the matter of liberty and tradition, and there was an even 50-50 split in the legislature over that. I believe that in the last month that has gone by, I've not only maintained a good relationship with my party members, my coalition partners in the Order of Tao, but also with members of the Iron Union. I have talked extensively with them throughout this process, even though we do have very diverging views on war and peace. I believe that we have a mutual respect that is formed between us. It's hard to say how much the traditionalists who were in the other half of the legislature hold recent events against me. I know that things have been harsher in regard to the members of the IFP in the legislature. I'm not sure what the legislators feel.
The IFP, we have no feelings against you. We think you're great.
Wait, who are you talking to?
I'm talking to Joe.
Okay.
Oh, Joe just came in.
Yeah.
I've been here the whole time.
No, Joe Neeson. He meant Joe Neeson.
Yeah, Joe Neeson.
Hey, Joe Neeson.
Oh, yes, he is here. Yeah, so, as I was saying, I believe that the legislatures, it has often changed what its relationship with the ministry is. Of course, after the first stream, with the reaction to the loss of our scout, I actually think that was our lowest point in terms of ministerial legislative relations, given the reactions there. I think that while there are some disagreements, there are also some agreements that exist between the ministry and the legislature, and that it's not so adversarial as it might appear to some. I think most of the real differences currently within our government are more along partisan lines than between the branches.
I can certainly see that perspective, and yeah, no, I definitely agree. There has been a lot of split, and it's almost as if there are two factions of each branch that are more closely allied with each other than the others, and that's certainly along partisan lines.
I don't see the fight between the ministry and the legislature affecting stuff, but especially for the ministry, because I think people are hitting more of the leg right now because of its inefficiencies and flaws compared to the ministry. But I hope the ministry legislative relations get repaired by the next session. But it depends on how we handle the procedures moving forward, and if we start being dicks to them or not.
Yes, and now that we have like a very wide variety of parties here, I'd actually like to ask the question that we clearly the inefficiency of the legislature and of the government as a whole has been very prominent this last week and over the past month, I think we all see that being exacerbated with a much larger legislature coming into the game this next term. So I think it's important now that I know the current legislators are voting on a lot of bills to regulate the government and the time that it's allowed to take. But are there going to be any additional liberties on time? Because inevitably 12 people voting in a 24-hour span or 48-hour span is a lot different than 21. And also, a lot more tensions can be fostered when maybe less time is spent voting and more time is spent debating than has been spent over the past couple weeks.
Well, I think in response to that, I think that that's why it's important that we pass these procedures now before the incoming legislature. We'll have a small legislature. It's important to clarify the role of the legislature and also clarify the procedures. Now, and I don't see them becoming an issue even with a larger legislature. Hopefully it will pass Riga or one of its competitors powers and responsibilities.
Yeah, something we're supposed to be doing in at least the second, which ended in disaster, and now we're here. I feel disappointed about that one. I will officially apologize as Speaker of the Legislature for the disaster that was the second legislative session. Because we got absolutely nothing done, and the stuff we did get done, we got sued over and declared null and void. So yeah, but I will like to avoid that in the future. Personally, what I originally intended for the procedures was that we all the legislators, because it was just 12 of us, we all get on like voice chat or something like that, and we just one by one talk about the bills, and then once we felt like we were done, we just vote on them all and pass them. But because, of time limits and stuff like that, some legislators complaining about how that system would be ripe for abuse and stuff like that, we switch over to the system we have now, which is inefficient at best. I would put it as. Yeah. But I would like to hand the question to you. Would you prefer a live system where all the legislators, especially now we're expecting like 20 to 21, get on like voice call and just shout at each other for a good solid 4 to 5 hours and then pass the bills? I see that as being way It'd be fun, yes, and way more quicker, but I'm not sure about how to control that.
I mean, I definitely see the theater of that becoming much more exciting for all parties involved in Democraciv, but I think the effectiveness is even further compromised at that point, because you have noise, you have just people. Ad hominem is certainly more available then, because you never really hate somebody until you're actually talking to them, and then you really feel like hurting them. And so I think with currently the divides are only going to get larger, and that would be a bad decision. And do we even see a future where the legislature, as it exists right now, if it continues to expand by this much, can function how it constitutionally functions?
Well, first off, I think in previous constitutions there was a cap around 25 because they foresaw this issue of, what happens if the leg gets so big it becomes uncontrollable. So they capped it like between 21 and 25, which we are already hitting right now. However, this constitution was drafted. You have to understand to understand the flaws of this constitution, you have to understand when it was made. This was made when a max of between 5 to 20 people were active participants. This was a time when we thought the game was dead. So they thought the cap was unnecessary because they thought the growth would be slow enough that we could figure it out in the leg. But since the explosion of the popularity of this game, we are now running into these issues of when would the legislature become uncontrollable and dysfunctional because of its large size.
Definitely. Does anybody? Oh no! You please go. Please go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. No, what I was going to say is certainly that is one fix for it. However, if we continue to grow at this size, do you see a complete amendment of the legislative system where maybe it doesn't cap at 25, it caps higher, but there's a different function or two houses of the legislature or something along those lines? Or do you think that it would be suitably effective to just implement a cap and leave it at that? Because the way I see it, we have so many parties right now that even capping it at 25 seems to keep representation from certain people.
Yeah, I could see that happening, but I've seen proposals for a two-house system before, but I'm not sure the viability of that because, yes, it'll be more stable, but it could exacerbate the inefficiencies of the legislature because not only you have to wait for one house, but you have to wait for the other house to approve the bill and the two houses to work on the bill together.
Definitely.
Then, on top of that, you've got the executive who has to go over that bill.
Yeah.
Potentially send it back down to the two houses. On the City Standards Act, which I remember working on a month, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a really long time.
Well, it seems that right now the problem is really just there has to be a way to tackle the efficiency, and I think people have good ideas on that, and so I think that's the big problem with this election and of this next legislative cycle, and definitely the problem. Yeah, no, you go.
Yeah, no, you continue. I cut you off by accident.
Oh no, I was finishing up. You are perfectly fine. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, another thing about inefficiency is that there's a lot of what I call lurker legislators. Lurker legislators are basically, they don't usually participate in debates and stuff like that. And then when it comes time to vote, like 2 hours before the vote ends, they just jump in and vote the party line. And I think that's causing the inefficiencies of the leg because as speaker, I don't know when to call it off because I'm not sure if, say, String just comes in and say, wait a minute, this is all stupid. No, I'm beating all this, and I don't know. Like, that's also a problem. I think it's engagement.
Yeah, and do you think we'll see a difference with that, with the new variety that appears to be coming out in this election? Or
oh yeah, we're going to get a way more engaged legislator this time. way more, because a lot of the active people who are just joined during the first legislative session are now trying to get positions themselves, and if they keep this activity up, I see the inactivity issue being not an issue, and hopefully speeding up the legislative process.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely see, honestly, the UP being the most vocal party in the legislature by far. Coming up.
Yeah.
So I would like to take up the committee proposal again. But currently, if we get 21-5, something like that, legislator, do you think there will be enough work for all of them?
Well, the job of a legislator is just write a bill, debate the bill, and pass or fail the bill. And we're having problems now where people find that boring. So, I don't like. It's like I have the same problem with the commission's idea as I do with the two-house idea. The idea is basically if you split up the legislator, they feel more empowered and stuff like that, and thus it should be more efficient. But my perspective is that you're adding unnecessary bureaucracy to something that's supposed to be simple, because the job of the legislator is to make the bills and to pass or fail said bills. So what you're just adding is an extra layer of complexity for a problem that I think could be solved in a more simple way. That's my take on it.
And which would the simpler way be then?
My idea was the live session, or a more engaged legislator where they are actively debating the bills and saying, you know what, if we feel time this bill should be voted on, they vote on the bill and continue on their day. I feel that if we get a more engaged legislator, then all these problems wouldn't be exacerbated as much, but more solved. Not solved per se, because the legislature will always be as inefficient, because we're 21 people deciding on what to do. You're not going to get something really efficient as say a five-person branch as you get with 20. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I get what you mean here.
So
it's illegal under the current interpretation of the Constitution. Party heads, as automatically proxying for all of their caucus members, they all vote. The party heads all vote. They assume that all members of their caucus agree with them. It's, say Charlie would vote, would count for all celestial legislators.
That's illegal. That's illegal. And I do not agree with that.
It is illegal, yes. But as perhaps a constitutional amendment, I feel that could. But I feel it could help ease some of the issue of inactive legislators.
Well, the thing about inactive legislators is that they only are active when they need to vote. That's why I call them lurker legislators, because they don't engage in the activity, they just vote. So, there's no real process for impeaching a legislator per se. I think it might be, but the Constitution leaves it vague. Let me check it. I need to read this.
Yeah, it's not. Inactivity is not really
a thing
as applicable to the legislature as it is to like something like
Ministry and Supreme Court. There's a clear defined process, but it just says the legislature has the power to impeach someone. That's it. It doesn't really define the rules of what you do when legislators are inactive and the only they do is vote.
I definitely think what Joe just described is for our current system would be a fix, right? Because we have lurker legislators that maybe don't want to vote. But if we go up to 20, I think the point is that we're going to have people that want to engage, and then inevitably we don't want to stop engagement by allowing. I think it's a good idea for the system we have, but I think coming up to stop that would more halt like the growth of engagement that we're going to see, and I think that's a beneficial thing for the community, that we're going to have more engagement from more parties, and to give that kind of a cop out
is of course that in drafting legislative lists, I think everyone, after 1 week, everyone who's been involved in writing who's on the list, inactive legislators, and putting on more active legislative candidates onto their legislative lists.
Well, that's a party responsibility, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think it should fall on your party if you become the party that's like, hey, here is X. Who, yeah, well, here's Charlie. Here's Charlie that's voting for X, Y, and Z. Other legislators, they haven't
by the
spoken
way,
in 4 days.
Charlie's running for ministry now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Good
he
luck,
got
Charlie.
tired of the leg. He got tired of the leg, so he's now running for ministry. Hey, Blonde.
Bonjour.
I mean, we want to halt that though. We want to kill that kind of system where somebody speaks for a party. I think more than anything, because it's like if the way that you've described it, Joe, it would work now, but then it would become almost like a delegate system, like a constant convention.
Can somebody catch me up?
Whereas,
We're right now talking about, because I did the math like a few days ago, and what I figured out is that if you add up all the party membership plus independents, and you multiply it by 0.15, which is the percentage it's 15%, which is used for determining how many seats in the legislature has.
Yep.
Where I got 20.55, which means that depending on how many lurkers vote or not, we're looking at a 20 to 21 legislator lag for the next government. Next government.
There might even be more. I mean, I remember in the last
But that's assuming that
a lot of
every
people-
party votes. So.
too also jumped in.
Yeah. Like,
well, that's the thing.
Well, do you remember me saying like, oh, we're expecting like between 8 to 12 or something, 8 to 13 or something like that? Like, I remember like banking predictions like we're probably low end is 8, high end is like 13, and we end up.
I remember that. I was looking at 2 seats in the legislature.
And
Could the
we
high
end
end
up
be
on the high
23?
end, so
Could it be 23?
you could push 23.
You could push
The highest it could go is 25, 26, but
Yeah,
I don't
but-
expect anything higher than that.
26 would be just absolutely ridiculous.
I don't
26
expect
is like-
anything like that. I'd be surprised if we hit 20, to be honest, because
We're hitting 20.
you reckon?
No,
The entire union of the people.
You have to.
That's 20 people right there. That's an additional 2 seats.
20 is very likely. 20. I looked it up. 180 voters. That's 27 seats, though.
Yes, but
Yeah.
it's not calculated. If you're a member of a party, that doesn't automatically mean you count towards the legislative total. Though.
exactly.
So
This is like the high end ish.
Honestly, it depends on entirely depends on how many voters we get. And speaking from just what I've seen, I can only speak for like the 2 parties that I've been in, but we haven't had 100% participation, put it that way. And I've been in Democraciv for 3 iterations now. I'd say 20 is optimistic, and maybe I'm the naysayer, maybe I'm the doomsday prophet, but like, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm just not. I guess I'm just not as optimistic as
we
the rest
had
of us.
85 voters last time, and we had a huge increase of parties, members, citizens, whatever.
Yeah.
100 voters, probably 120. That's the minimum, I would say.
Yeah, my pessimistic vote was we're going to get 8 seats. Because I think, how did I got that number again? I forgot. Was it, I added up? No, I think I added up all the party membership at the time, and it came up with like 12 or something like that. And we ended up getting 12. So I'm thinking, because that worked last time, going off experience, if we add up all the party membership, I got 20.55, so that's what I'm saying, 20 to 21 seats.
That's in the entire party membership, though.
Yeah, but there's also the thing, okay, you could have inactive party members, yes, but that could be made up by lurkers and independents and swing voters and stuff like that.
It could. You're very correct in that it could, but I don't know. Like I say, perhaps I'm just a doomsdayer, but I'm not as optimistic as the rest of you on that regard. I would say probably, if I had to ballpark it, again, this is, entirely based on what I feel. It's not based on any sort of data or anything. I'd say about 17, maybe.
That's still an increase.
It's an increase. So I think we're going to have an increase. I just don't think it's going to be that big of an increase. I don't think it's going to be as big of an increase as everybody else has said.
Yeah. Well, I think in any case, I think the projections that we've clearly predicted over the past hour or so, I think those will hold true as long as there's any kind of gain, though. Because as we were talking about, like, you and the Dow, you have so much legislative power to get votes right now that you're clearly going to have a representative majority.
Yeah.
And clearly the Union of the People is going to take seats. So I think no matter what happens, the makeup, no matter how many seats there are, the makeup is going to be similar.
Yeah, the makeup is going to be similar. Like I'm second in the Dow's legislative list. I'm pretty much guaranteed to get a seat. But I'm just weary of, say, people who are in the third or fourth of their party lists. I'm wary whether they'll get a seat or not, because we've got so many political parties this time. Adding on to that, independents who decide to run. I'm not sure whether there are any.
There are 3 independents running for legislator.
Well, then there we go. If you add them in, the fact that the independent vote might go to them, it might not. I don't know. But I would be wary. If you're first or second in a legislative list, you pretty much, if you're a relatively big party, you're guaranteed to get a seat, I'd say. But if you're not, I would be
9 different parties and independents running for the legislator. 9 different lists.
Ugh.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun.
Oh.
Well, I mean, we can discount Nuke right away. Not to mean any offense, but they don't have enough party membership, so it's really 8, and then
Capitalists might get
eight.
I feel like this is like
running.
I feel like this is like us talking about how bad might get a seat. Like, we all thought that bad was going to get a seat, but at the end, they didn't get the seat.
8 political parties and independents. I've done essays on the Weimar Republic, and let me tell you, it didn't really go well with so many political parties.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a chaos. It's gonna be chaos. And there are some.
I suspect that some of the parties will have to merge over time in order to stabilize things. I don't think this is very sustainable in the long run.
No. I mean, it could be.
My party's looking at a ton of different mergers right now, especially with the smaller parties.
Honestly, once we hit September, that's when the real slog is going to hit. That's when quite a sizable amount of the people here are going to just drop off the face of the earth, and the people who are left are going to have to pick up the slack from that. And that's not me being doomsday. That's me having been here for Mark II or Mark III and experienced the exact same thing again and again. So prepare yourselves for that, ladies and gentlemen.
That's gonna be fun. Also, yay! The game's about to. Now, Ipple, how many vote? What's the party membership of bad when the elections happened? Do you remember? It was like
about that.
I wasn't
7.
I wasn't.
It was 7. All right. Yeah, 7 voters. Everyone thought they were going to get a seat. They didn't get a seat.
And especially now with so many people joining, 7 is even less than it was back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, like, we thought, okay, so when you're saying, like, independents might get it, small, minor parties might get it, I'm saying no, because if you go by the bad model, which we all thought might get the seat, they didn't get the seat and the party collapsed, so I'm foreseeing that happening with the minor parties. They're not going to get a seat, and they're going to look for either a merger or they collapse and become independent.
So I would like to share some stats from the last elections and make an argument for that each party can really expect to gain as many votes as they got members. If we look at the Celestial Party, they had tied first place with 19 votes. They had 16 members, so they got a bit above their membership. The Industrial Futurist Party got 19 votes. And
we had 14 members at the time. We got 5.
No, we only had 9 members according to this list, so you really overperformed that time. The United Front, Unity and Blood and Iron list had 14 votes. Together we had only 9 members. So we
8.
Also...
It was like 8 members together.
Yeah, we also overperformed.
8, 9.
The Liberal Party was really exact though. They got 12 votes and with 11 members. The real surprise was the Progressive Union. We got 11 votes but only had 5 members. Bad actually underperformed with 4 votes with 5 members. So it's really, I would say you can expect the party to get as many votes as they got members at least, and then overperform some from the independent voters.
Yeah, that's the thing. We treat, like, I'm guilty of this pretty much like 5 minutes ago, treating independents as if they're a block, as if they're going to vote the same when it's the exact opposite of what an independent means.
Independent into the legislature.
Well,
that's going to be a surprise. That's going to be a surprise if that ever happens.
That's the thing.
Well, certainly with the presence. Well, no, you go.
No, I was just going to say that, like, everyone said that in previous situations. You know, an independent, well, they can't compete with the parties, and yeah, I can't remember a legislature where we haven't had an independent, at least in the past iteration.
Yeah, maybe like once or twice, but not consistently. We're getting independent. Like, if all the major parties start acting like idiots.
If there's 133 voters, an independent needs 7 votes to get a single seat.
Huh.
They can do that.
I don't see that happening.
I don't see it either, but
I think you need name recognition more than anything to be an independent.
I think the problem with that is, no offense, but the only independents I know are Ken Lane and Immaterial, and I don't know if Immaterial is running for anything. And I know Ken Lane's running for ministry.
I don't know Immaterial. I know Ken very well, but I don't know Immaterial.
Ken or Das might be able to pull off an independent run.
That's the thing, though. Like, I'm gonna keep harkening back to Mark II because it's pretty much most of what I remember. But back then, everyone was pretty much new. Like, Mark II pretty much got up and fell over on its ass and died. But Mark II was the real sort of Kickstarter, and everybody was pretty much new. So an independent had a real chance there if they were able to get their views out. Whereas nowadays, it's like, if an independent comes, a lot of people are going to turn around and be like, who the fuck are you? Whereas back in Mark II, everyone was turning around, so it was pretty much equal.
Yeah, it's definitely a game of ideologues, really, because you got to be vocal, and people have to know your name. And I think that's a problem with the legislative candidates right now, at least. And I also think that's a problem with the small parties, and why I don't necessarily know if small parties will continue to function.
I don't, unless small parties like explode in popularity like the People did.
Yeah,
I see them being like munched up by a larger party or collapse and be split up by the major parties or become independents like that did.
Does anybody know what's happening with None?
Yeah, I
collapsed.
No idea.
It collapsed.
Is it fully collapsed?
It nearly collapsed. I think, like, okay, what Ken Lane and what Sean basically are saying is that at this point, it basically is dead. It's just dominating House being their own high-load party and stuff like that. It's not a serious political force. Bad only had a chance to influence stuff if they made it to the first. They had a ledge seat or something like that. But right after the collapse of Bad, there's of splinter groups and stuff like that. They never really reorganized.
What a great article about that. That was cool.
Yeah, but from my knowledge, None is de facto dead, although still alive. Sort of like the Democratic Ninja Party.
Bear with me, guys.
Isn't that just Das at this point?
Yeah. Once again, de facto dead, but technically
Get
alive.
on Discord, so their names are different colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a color part. It's a color party.
Yeah, I thought he just gave it to himself for the meme at this point.
Yeah, he gave it to us. The only reason why
Das does everything for the meme.
Yeah. You have to understand, like, he does everything for the meme. Like, he sometimes wants to, like, if he wants to leave DC for a while, he just gets himself banned. That's how he functions. So, yeah, that's Das for you. He's basically independent, but he just likes the color.
Yeah, it's a shame, because I like Das. You know, I get along really well with him. Like, he's just the way he conducts himself sometimes, it leaves a lot to be desired, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, and he seems to bounce back and forth between personas almost.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, were you here last time?
Oh, yeah, no, I was here. That was hard.
What, your roleplay with him?
Oh, no, that was wonderful. my BDSM roleplay with Das was a wonderful experience. I would do it
was a
again.
masterpiece.
Oh,
man.
yeah, it's
That was a
always
masterpiece.
nice, you know.
No, I was referencing the impeachment vote and how that was difficult.
I mean back in Mark 2 and 3, the way you said multiple personas, yeah, he got banned for using alt.
Yeah, he had multiple
Twice.
alts on multiple government positions, which violates dual mandate laws, and he got banned for that. And eventually, I think his third ban was basically the mods. I think a Nazi party tried to form in Mark 3, and the mod stopped that. So what Das basically did was start memeing the Nazi party and calling the mods Nazis because they stopped the formation of the Nazi party. And he got banned for using Nazi imagery. And there was like a whole campaign to free Das at that point.
Oh my god.
I think I've seen posts about free Das.
Yeah, I've seen posts of that too. I never got that story fully explained till much later. But is that an accurate answer to what happened?
Oh, yeah, that's completely accurate, but what I'm just saying is, fuck me. It's basically the only reaction you can have to Das. In one way or another.
We actually have a comment.
Looking at you, BDSM boy.
We have a comment.
We have a comment about the earlier discussion from an independent who said his name was mentioned. My name is immaterial. And he says he's not running that as an independent. He is planning to vote for a party and not an independent.
Bad news for any independents right there.
Not necessarily. I mean, if I was an independent, I wouldn't expect other independents to vote for me because, like, the point of my existence is that I'm running on my platform, on my views, and so I'm looking to fish for that lone UP member, that lone Celestial that maybe doesn't feel represented.
Yeah, you're basically looking for splitting the vote, basically.
Honestly, I think that the executive is probably where an independent can get in due to voting. And Ken Lane, as name recognition, to see an independent win would be Ken Lane in the executive.
Yeah, I definitely see him on the board.
Yeah. I explained this earlier, so I'm going to reiterate now for the viewers watching now. The legislature is more party-focused, the way the voting's set up, so you might get the occasional independent here and there, but I don't see it being the norm. I see it as more being something random happening rather than, something normal like saying, hey, there's an independent. But in the ministry, I could easily see that being the norm, like an independent suddenly getting into the ministry. Because it's more candidate-focused rather than party-focused.
Yeah, definitely.
Does anyone have anything else to add? Question mark?
Coalitions are the solutions to that if multiple independents wants to run together. So in case there is a seat left over, then another one wins on the list. But
It's kind of a market that's been left untapped, right? Because like the United Front's dead. It's
Yeah,
dead.
Well,
And then the
tradition debate, I will have you know, the liberty versus tradition debate killed all coalition talk. But now that that's over,
That's over? You should
That's
probably
over.
tell the rest of Democraciv that.
well, there's a court case. You know what? There's always going to be court cases. We'll see
As
what
long as
happens.
we're still getting sued, it's not over.
adopted liberty, we're done with that. No one, we can't take back the executive adopting liberty.
Well,
No, yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about earlier.
yeah, well,
It's over.
You should explain that to all the people that insist on keep having this debate, because I'm fed up of it at this point, and I know a lot of people are too.
I think a lot of the debate that's currently happening, though, like I know String just filed a lawsuit. I think a lot of that comes from not necessarily being upset about the tradition vote anymore, because it's been a long time now. It's not necessarily about the tradition vote now. It's about the idea of the steps that the ministry took in that vote. They were multiple shades of legal and illegal at the same time, and
I mean,
those
to
have
be
to be
fair-
clarified.
To be fair, the leg pulled that off too. So both sides are kind of dirty. I mean,
Oh yeah,
no,
they're dead.
There was fault on many sides. Many sides.
But the legislature, the moves that it took that were illegal have already been declared illegal.
yeah.
So the ministry currently has been held up, even though there were things that were just objectively illegal about the referendum, about the results of the referendum, about how it was conducted,
I mean,
and obviously the referendum wasn't the end all be all.
what the ministry's argument was, what was explained to me by Wes, was basically, hey, we could make procedures based on how in-game actions are affected. So if it's anything completely in-game and doesn't affect meta at all, we could pass a procedure without legislative approval, such that we could do it on our own. So because of that clause, we could make our own referendum and bypass the legislator. That was their reasoning, and that technically is true.
Even if it's legal, it's totally unethical.
Yeah,
It's unethical, but unethicality is not a matter for the courts. Legality is a matter for the court.
But I mean, executives should take that into consideration in the future if
Oh
they
yeah,
want to.
I'm not denying that they should take ethical considerations into consideration, but my point is that this constant litigate, this constant suing of people, it's over
Unstable.
ethics, and it's unstable. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just getting very weary of it, and I think as a community we
Really
just need to
defined
collectively
powers.
move on. Oh, I'm not denying that they need clearly defined powers. I'm just saying that surely legislation should be the avenue for that, not constant.
by the way,
Yes.
I think I summoned Wes. I think I summoned Wes.
Ooh. Has he appeared?
No, RB's working on that behind the scenes, but he will appear soon.
Cool. No. What I was just gonna say, vote for my bill in the legislature right now. The LCEA. Establish lower courts so that we don't have all these suing problems, because you won't have to hear about it.
Hey, Wes.
And determine the procedures for the executive and the legislature. Hi, Wes.
Well, that's always important.
Hey, Wes. You alright, bud?
Yeah.
Greetings, Supreme Commander Hoot.
Have you missed my lovely voice, Wes?
Of course I have. No day goes by where I don't yearn for it.
I miss boxing.
Oh, yeah, should we introduce ourselves?
Should we do it from the order that's listed on the stream?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Is Joe
who's first?
Is Joe still here?
Joe's still here,
Joe
yeah.
Parrish? Okay.
Let's start with Blonde. Then we go
Hi.
down.
Hi, I'm Blonde Hug 78, and I don't know what the fuck I am. Next.
I'm Minister Parrish of the Progressive Union.
Oh, yeah, I'm a liberal. Sorry.
Yeah. I am just Ravis of the Industrial Futures Party.
Next.
Are you a legislator?
No, he's
No, I'm
not.
not a legislator yet.
He came
Yeah.
in too late.
Yet.
Cough, cough yet. Wait, what are you on the list? What number are
I'm
you?
4, so let's hope.
Yeah,
You got the short end of the stick, Nate. You got the short
No,
end of the stick.
I volunteered for the short end of the stick.
Okay, you're just like EMAS.
Yeah.
I don't think you want to
3
be.
legislators already, and we had to give precedence to those who already had seats.
I mean, we did in the Iron Union, we did primaries, and one of the incumbents came in at 5th. So.
Yeah, we did primaries, and
Who was that?
I beat an incumbent.
Minor. Minor came in 5th.
Oh yeah,
So
Blonde. Where did you end up in the primaries?
I ended up second behind Haldia, and Pepper, whatever the fuck his name is, he ended
Peppo
up
Spaghetti Man.
That's the one, yeah.
I don't know his name.
Pepple Spaghetti Legislature? I don't know.
Peppagetti Soproni.
P.S. That's his name.
RB, would you
No.
like to introduce yourself?
I'm the host of this lovely show. I'm the second on the list of my party's legislative candidates, and I'm the former leader and whatever else of Iron Union and Blood and Iron.
Hi, I'm RetroSpaceMan. I was the founder of the Unity Party and former co-chairman of the Iron Union. The formation of a merger between the Unity Party and Blood and Iron Party, formed and headed by RB. I am the first speaker of the legislature. I am first on the Iron Union's legislative list. And, yeah, that's me. You can call me Retro, because that's a lot shorter than Retro Space.
But space is cool.
Yes, it is. But most people just call me Retro.
It's very, very cold.
And dark.
Oh.
And vacuumous.
Vacuumous.
Actually, I think it's vacuous, but yeah, you know.
Yes, my Dyson is very vacuumous.
Yes.
Ooh, Bird just showed up.
A bird
He's not
showed up?
in
Oh,
Who showed
okay.
up?
Oh, when am I supposed to say your name, by the way?
Bear. Oh, bears. Thought you said bird.
And I
No.
thought you said bird.
I also heard bird.
Oh,
I think
so
he's coming.
apparently you gave him the role straight away.
I think he already had the role.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
He was on here earlier.
Yeah.
just a British.
Ipple, you're next.
Okay. I'm TheIpleJonesion. I'm co-chairman of the Industrial Futurist Party, former founder of the Global Futurist Party, and I'm a legislator, and probably will be a legislator again.
Wes.
Interesting.
I'm Supreme Commander WesGutt. I'm a Minister for the Order of Tao. The best general confirmed in all of democracy.
Cocky, I see.
And Bear, introduce yourself.
Wes Scouty, Mr. Scoutface would probably disagree with that.
The Zulus, Babylon, America, Russia, Germany.
Hold on, was anyone... Is he really, really quiet to anybody else, or is it just me?
Yeah, he's
Who,
quiet.
Bear?
Bear, yes. Bear is quiet. Bear is quiet.
Am I quiet?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
quiet.
he's very quiet.
Alright, hold on, I'll fix that 1 sec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Should we ask Bear about his predictions for the election?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we ask Bear, we should ask Wes. Wes, what's your prediction for the
Oh,
elections?
yeah.
Wes? What's your prediction?
Well, thank you for your time, Wes.
No.
Something.
He's typing.
Ooh.
Oh.
Oh, his headset died. Dang.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
can
hear you.
hear.
Ah!
What was the question?
What's your predictions for the upcoming elections?
Shit. I feel it's gonna be good. Iron Union's underrepresented. I think IFP maybe slightly overrepresented.
We got the
Kind
independent.
of depends. Yeah, maybe. Really depends.
Also, I think we still have 17 because we still have 17 on the server, just not on the Discord.
Yeah. That could also be it.
Like, 2 people left the main Discord because I never saw anyone unrank themselves on the main Discord.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think Union of the People is gonna have a nice time. Because they're a whole new thing.
This is their deciding term, yeah.
Also, what do you feel about a 20 to 21 person legislator? Would it be possible or no?
A 20-person legislature would be very annoying. I mean, you'd have to have a good.
It's also likely. So there's that.
It is likely.
Yeah. I remember like counting. Well, last time I counted up party membership and it gave me like 12 to 13. And it ended up being 12. So now when I do the same thing like a few days ago, it was 20 to 21. And yeah, that's gonna be fun. What's your opinion? Bear.
Is my mic better?
Yeah, your mic's better.
Yeah, no, it is.
So I think my party's going to do pretty well this election. Are
No,
you guys getting the numbers for the amount of legislators? Is it just based off of the registered voters or just
party membership?
Party members?
That's like the only raw data we have.
We have registered voters.
Yeah, we do have registered voters, but yeah, but right now we're just basing it off of party membership.
The estimate is based off that. It depends really how many people vote.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I think this election will be pretty telling for the future because all of the people who were just interested in the beginning are probably starting to wane. So the people who are going to vote consistently throughout the rest of this game are probably going to, it's going to stay the same, I think. So this election will be telling.
73, I think, on the referendum, and that was with some people like boycotting it. So
yeah. And that's without pings too.
I didn't vote.
There are some things.
Vote either.
Yeah, your right to vote was stolen from you because you just had to.
It was. I'm going to argue this till I die.
That is not how disenfranchisement works. I am sorry.
I'm sorry. Like I was reading through your case. I was reading
100 comments.
I was reading through your case on that, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of fair. And they were like, my vote was taken because I chose not to. I'm like, okay, guy. Reel it back in a bit.
That's when you know you fell off the crazy train. That's when you know you're pulling straws for an argument. Wait, isn't Espresso arguing the same exact thing?
He was.
Yeah, well, I think Espresso is more like the ministry's making decisions without input from every minister, which is kind of how the ministry has always worked. Like, you can still put
we've
your
done that on pretty much everything up to this point. Only when it became a matter of controversy did Minister Long seem to care about that.
When it became a matter of controversy, did you say the ministry doesn't vote, Joe? So
we're all wrong. He was wrong on that for sure. I don't agree with they don't vote. For some things, technically they don't vote. Like, it's weird, but
Who knows?